Okay, so everyone, it's 12 o'clock, so we want to go ahead and respect everyone's time and get underway. I know that we'll have people joining in for the next couple of minutes because everybody's in the same boat. We're joining meeting after meeting and trying to make it all work. So anyway, we'll work hard to honor your time here. Thank you so much for joining us today to talk about different factors that you can consider to make your remote workplace more comfortable, more effective, just feel better about the whole shift in this world that we're experiencing. And this is really meant to be an informal, conversational type of presentation. So please feel free, anytime you'd like to raise your hand or send us a message in the chat window, by all means do that. And I'll be lurking sort of a little bit in the background while our panelists are speaking. And if you have questions or whatnot, we'll keep an eye on that. And we may not be able to get to everything during our session, but I'm sure you guys are really getting accustomed to it now. We'll keep up with all the questions that you ask, even if we can't get them answered today, and we'll come back to you in some way, shape, or form to get you that information. So with that, let me introduce the folks that we have joining us today on our panel. We have Angie Bush, who is the Executive Director at Hospitality House of Charlotte. We have Chris Long from Centene Corporation. And then we have our own Stephanie McKee, Director of Technology for Aparo, and Ben Knudsen, our technologist. And I'm going to give each of them an opportunity to introduce themselves and give us a quick sentence or two about what they do. And then we'll reconvene and go forward with the topics of interest for today. So let me start with Angie, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and just tell us a brief bit about what you're doing.
Sure, absolutely. Again, my name is Angie Bush. I am the Executive Director at Hospitality House of Charlotte. We are a nonprofit that has benefited quite a bit from a number of Aparo initiatives. What we do is we connect hospitals, patients, and caregivers to improve patient outcomes. So we have a 20-bedroom facility, and it's filled every day, not right now though, but it's typically filled to the brim and to capacity and beyond with guests that are here for cancer, transplant, cardiac, and trauma issues. That's a little bit about us.
Right, Chris.
Yes, Chris Long, been in Charlotte just about my whole life and worked in technology here last 20 years. Currently with a company called Centene Corporation, which is probably one of the largest healthcare companies no one's ever heard of. The front-end services to the public are branded under different names, one per state. So in North Carolina, it's going to be Carolina Complete Health. But 1 in 15 people in the U.S. get their insurance through Centene, one of the subsidiaries, mostly Medicaid and Medicare, some ACA. And I'm working in the software development group, building out systems to support the 22 million members that we have. And happy to be with you guys here today.
Great. Stephanie.
Hey everybody, I'm Stephanie McKee. I'm the Director of Technology Engagements for Aparo. I've been with the team for going on 7 years. And I head up a program called Tech Therapy. So Ben and I are out in the community working with our nonprofits, helping bring them technology resources and providing IT consulting, advice, and guidance. So I'm glad you guys are here.
Thanks. And Ben.
Hey everyone, I'm Benjamin Knudsen. I am the technologist at Aparo. I've been at Aparo for almost 3 years now. As Stephanie was saying, I work as part of that tech therapy team where we deliver guidance, consulting, resources, and recommendations to the nonprofits. I also, as well as handle Aparo's internal technology support.
Perfect. Thank you, Ben. So, guys, one of the things that we were thinking about as we were approaching the content for today was just trying to find some points of interest that you might be able to take away and apply to your remote work setting. And one of the biggest things we keep talking about is how do we maintain a sense of community? What are some of the tools that we can use to help everyone feel connected and a part of the team? And so in terms of maintaining a sense of community and whatnot, I'd like to offer up an opportunity for Angie to tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing now that most of your staff is actually working remotely. Tell us a little bit about the challenge that you've had in terms of trying to maintain the sense of community among your team members.
Absolutely. This definitely is very different. We're a small team. Our full staff is 11 people. So we have 8 full-timers that are usually all kind of at least in and out of the office during the day. So this has been very different. We're also used to doing a lot of collaborative work. And that has been, it's working, but it's definitely different, and it's not without making some changes. Some things that I wanted to make sure that I kept in place. We have a Monday afternoon, we call it a weekly stand-up, where everybody gets to talk about what's going on in their particular area and find out if they need any help from anyone else from the organization, to just kind of, but I didn't want that to be lost in this, because it definitely was more of a personal time. We'd also talk about what we did on the weekend and stuff like that. It was just a weekly time when we all knew that we could connect. And so we kept that, and we're doing that via Zoom. And it's been interesting because I feel like Zoom is different. I definitely like seeing everybody's faces. That's great. But it still feels a little awkward to me. So I just have to get over that and do it anyway, because it's better than just trying to have a phone call where everybody says that and you're talking to them about their weekends. And at least then we can see people's expressions and ask people to kind of share something that they have going on that's new or different. We've got one person on our staff that started painting during this period of time. So she'll like show us something that she's worked on, but now everyone's kind of involved in it. And we have one friend that has like a naughty cat that always likes to come and like walk in during the meetings and stuff. So we'll all say hi to Francie when she comes into the camera, that kind of thing. So that's kind of neat too. So we try to keep it informal and keep the same feel of stand-up. Our weekly stand-up meeting, it's a little different, but we've got to make those kinds of investments to still stay connected to one another, and kind of in that personal way, because this is kind of a long period of time to not have that. It's beyond a vacation, you know. This is a little longer than that. So that's what we're doing here.
Those are some great examples. Naughty cat just really is my antenna. I'd like to know more. Chris, tell us a little bit about how you guys are managing this sort of change in the environment. How are you guys keeping engaged and maintaining that sense of connection with one another? Did we lose Chris? Chris, you're muted, I think.
Yeah.
There we go.
I was trying to unmute him.
Thank you.
I know, it's hard.
There's one of the things to watch out for. Even though Centene is, my group is all software development folks, about 35 or so. As a culture, Centene has always been get people together, do collaboration, you know, together in the same room. And that's why all the teams have been set up. So us shifting to working from home, even though from a technology standpoint, developers can do their jobs basically anywhere. They have their laptops, same softwares on them, connectivity, all that. In terms of how the teams interact and people stay connected, you know, they're missing that person sitting right next to them. So we definitely do kind of weekly touch-ins that are not so much business focused, but, you know, are the teams, are people on the teams, does anybody know a good place to buy toilet paper from? Or, anybody having anything in particular they're struggling with in a team might, or even just some of the fun stuff, like Angie was saying, somebody's picked up a new hobby. Our team, some of them were playing cards together and pool together and things like that. So we're encouraging people to share when they find something fun online that's kind of a group activity, that we socialize that and see if other people want to be involved and take part of it. And we just make that space. People, when you're working from home, there can be a tendency for the days to run on, for them to blend together. Parents are having to have their kids at home and things like this. So we're becoming more flexible with the schedule part of it, because we know people are having to deal with things they don't normally have to deal with during the day. But we're also being intentional about putting in some time for us just to connect as people, as humans, as individuals that care about each other.
Yeah, great points, Chris. I appreciate you sharing that. One thing you might notice before I roll over to Stephanie to share a little bit about what we're doing at Aparo, you guys might notice a little bit of chat activity going on. Please feel free to pop in there with any ideas that you might have, or things that other people might want to glom onto. Go ahead and put them in that chat, and feel free to share and ask questions. I do have a question that has come in, which I will answer in just a moment. But before we do that, I want to give Stephanie a chance to share a little bit about what she and Ben have been doing to sort of help us in Aparo remember that we have tools to stay connected to. What are some things we've been doing internally?
Yeah, so we we're in a good spot, and we're all a cloud-based infrastructure. So we are able to work remotely. We've been utilizing Zoom a lot, and we use Microsoft Teams through our Office 365 subscription. And Teams is really great for all of our internal meetings. We have, like Angie mentioned, we have our stand-up meeting once a week. We're still doing our staff meeting that we do once a month. We bring our lunch to our desk, and we all jump on Teams and have our staff meeting and communicate and collaborate. And it's kind of like being at the office. Let's see. We also use Teams for, Kim, our CEO, set up a morning hello and an evening goodbye, little optional meeting if you want to jump on and just touch base with everybody. So we're really trying to stay connected using all these great tools that are provided. I'll throw it over to Ben, see if he wants to add anything.
Hey, yeah, just kind of piggybacking on what you were saying, Stephanie. I think, as we were set up as that cloud-based organization already, it's helped us kind of transition. But definitely something that I think all of us are missing is that personal interaction. And that's something that, we held really high also inside of Aparo, not just internally, but also with our nonprofits. So I think that's a little bit of an adjustment for us. But yeah, some of the tools that we had, they're definitely getting utilized.
One thing I would add to that is having someone like Ben who helps us keep our thinking straight when it comes to using our technology, because we're coming up with some crazy ideas. Hey, how about if we do this or this or this, and it's helpful to have someone who is steady Eddie to keep us grounded, and more importantly, to keep the tech running for us. So I, for one, greatly appreciate all that background work that Stephanie and Ben do for us. I wanted to address the question that came in for us, and I want to set it up in a couple ways. First of all, one of the things we want our panelists to share a little bit about through the day is, what are some tools and things you can use just to minimally get up and running? What can you do in the next couple of days if you need some help? We're going to come to that. But this is a good question, I think, that came in that is worthy of discussion. The question is, can we share insights on best practices for organizations that are brand new to working remotely? For example, should there be a percentage of time that teams, focus on growing their personal and professional relationships versus actually doing the work of the business? What is the balance there? Do we have some commentary on best practices there? Stephanie, can I start with you?
Sure. As far as if you're not currently remote, as far as getting up and going, there's some tools that are out there and available, and quite a few of the software companies are donating free sign up, like Microsoft Teams. There is and we can share the link with you. There's a link you can go to and sign up for Microsoft Teams, and that'll enable your team to be able to communicate internally, and you can invite externally, which I've been testing out a little bit. But it's going to be free for the next year, and you do not have to have an Office 365 subscription. You can just use their Teams platform. Zoom also provides a free platform. And I think they've lifted the limitations on it. It was limited to, I think, 30 or 40-minute meetings, but now they've created sort of unlimited. And there's a limitation on how many participants can jump in there. But you can go to zoom.us and sign up for free conferencing there. As far as best practices, I'll just use Aparo for example. I'm usually out and about meeting with nonprofits every day. And now I've turned that into, I'm as busy as ever, and I've turned all of that into video conferencing. But I try to be very conscious of my schedule and how many meetings I have externally versus internally, because I find being on video, it's a little mentally draining by the end of the day if you're on, because you got to really be on. And so I would say best practice wise, kind of be conscious of your schedule and blocking out, a few hours a day to do your administrative work. And also, I find getting up during the day, going outside for a walk is very important. And I've had to force myself to do that because I find myself just sitting here for hours on end, and it's not very healthy.
Well, you make a good point, though, about, trying to be mindful about leaving the desk. And I think it's interesting. The part of this question is, how do we balance when we're working on personal relationships in this whole remote environment, when we know we have work sitting here nipping at our heels that needs to be done? Angie, how are you guys addressing that?
It's interesting. This has been, although we've been set up to work remotely for some time now, we worked with Aparo. We're on Office 365. We have all of our files and things on box.com, which makes it easy for everyone to be able to access what they need when they're not in the office, and everyone had been comfortable with doing that. So our newest thing to deal with has been the Zoom and the video conferencing, because likewise, I was actually having physical meetings with people. So now I'm having virtual coffees instead of actually going out to have coffee and meet people with that. To do that, one of the things I thought when this first happened, I thought, okay, because I'm a person who wants to kind of look for the bright side and things. So I thought, okay, this is great. I don't have to plan for any travel time. I can probably get like 3 times the amount of meetings in now,
right? Because
I don't have to drive from one spot to another. So this is great. I'm going to get like so much stuff done.
Yeah.
Well, it is draining. One, it's not something I'm completely comfortable doing. And it gave me this false sense that I had 3 times the amount of time during the day, and I really don't. I'm still, in terms of that being anything being a best practice, I say I'm trying to schedule my time in to do my administrative work, which was kind of falling by the wayside because I was feeling like I could be so much more productive and having these meetings and things. But I'm trying to differentiate my schedule a little bit too and spread some of them out. So I'm not just having meetings back to back to back to back. So that is helping. So although I'm not, driving in the car to go to a meeting now, I'm not also booking myself up for, for the entire day. And then I would go home or see. So right now I'm in my office because we're an essential service, so we can be in and out. So I'm in my office today. We've got some people coming in to do some maintenance work in the facility, so someone's got to be here. But I would go home then and just begin doing other work then. So I was really struggling with the work-life balance. So now I'm trying to set a time and at like maybe by 6 o'clock be done working completely so that it doesn't just keep on in my life just all day where I'm working 24 hours a day, which I can do. I felt like initially maybe this would be time where it would be more relaxing. And I haven't found that to be the case. In terms of nonprofits, we just had all of our same tasks to still do. And then we have to be on top of that concerned about communicating things to our donors and to our partners that we work with in the community and the hospital in ways that we wouldn't have had to have had that in our day before. We wouldn't have necessarily been doing all of that at one time. So it's kind of heightened a lot of the workload, I think. And then with the CARES Act and then applying for a PPP loan and all that stuff, that was like another thing that was then on top of what were already responsibilities that we had. And I'm trying to then do more webinars on things like maintaining your donors and staying in touch with them during this period of time where we're not able to have the events and the meetings and things like that. So I feel like this hasn't been the time that I thought it would be, where it was going to be a little more laid back. I feel like I've got like my workload kind of doubled. So I'm still trying to navigate that a bit. I don't know if anyone else feels the same way, but I'm not feeling like, oh, I've got all this time now that I'm at home. I'm not quite there. And maybe there's something I'm doing wrong and I'll learn something from somebody else here today, but I'm not in that boat yet.
Well, before we hear Chris share his thoughts on how they've been managing this balance, it's interesting that what I hear so far, the common thread is we're figuring it out as we go. We're not sure exactly what that balance is yet because we've never been in this situation and we're kind of building it as we go. But in any case, Chris, tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing to kind of find that balance between maintaining your professional network and relationships and literally, nose down into the work at hand.
Yeah, great topic. I think especially if I were a new group, not already somewhat used to doing this, I would take a crawl, walk, run approach. And by that I mean, pilot some things. Get some people that do different things to try this. Some things we found useful was do all the setup. Make sure Zoom is loaded on everybody's computer before they try working from home. Work through any of those kind of technical difficulties while people are still together, and then try it in phases. Get a few people to try it, a few different scenarios. Before you kind of jump everybody. That way you can kind of work through the wrinkles. And I definitely think there's the technical just mechanisms end of it that you have to, does everybody have access to everything they need? What are the new dynamics? Because we can't do meetings in the hall, you're going to have some more scheduled meetings or use a chat feature or something like in Zoom to try to randomly hit people up. But it takes a little bit to figure that stuff out. And like you said, Jennifer, we're all kind of figuring that out because not all of us have been in this spot before. I definitely feel that the human aspect of it, that interrelational soft skill piece, is something that needs to have some focus put on it specifically. We need to see how people are adapting. Some things that I coach my team on try to keep your same schedule. You know, get up every morning at the same time you used to, take a shower, get something for breakfast. You know, if you step out for lunch or you work through lunch, whatever, try to keep as much of that continuity as you can, because there will be a tendency for everything to kind of bleed together anyway. But that helps maintain some consistency there. And then be honest with yourself about, you know, what's working, what's not working. We've had to make changes up at my house, rearrange my office and things like that. I coordinate with my wife, so if she's on one call that is going to need a lot of participation, you know I'm aware of that. I don't schedule something or put myself in a place where we're going to have conflicts. But if we send that message to our people enough and bring that up and ask for their input, I think we'll get the ideas and we'll help people work through it. But not everybody's going to react to it the same. I have some people that are like, yay, work from home. I wish I'd have been doing this the whole time. And others are saying, I'm bouncing off the walls. I need some people contact. It really depends on the individual.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We all have different mechanisms for coping and for learning new things and whatever, and we have to give each other a little bit of grace. And even that question, I think, applies beyond just work relationships, but as you point out, even personal relationships in the house. And you try to find ways when everybody's working remotely. And our little trick is my husband just taps on the door. He can see me from anywhere in here. He just taps. Are you still at work? And that's our cue for, yeah, we can talk, or no, whatever. Anyway, I did want to point out that we had a participant share an idea in the chat window. So if you guys haven't seen that, check it out. There's a cool little idea for using Pinterest moments to sort of stay connected with everyone in staff meeting and whatnot. So be sure and have a look at that. But
Hey, Jennifer, sorry.
Yeah, sure.
In the chat window, I think that just went to the panelists and not all attendees.
Let's see. Oh, you're right. I missed that.
Copy and paste.
I'm copying it right now.
Okay, cool.
Sure. I'm sending it out to everybody. Yeah, I didn't catch. I caught that on the last thing. Yeah, there we go. Now everybody can see.
Okay,
Thanks.
awesome.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
So, guys, as we've been talking a little bit about just sort of managing this whole thing, from a transitional standpoint, but let's talk a little bit about the specific tools that people are using to, most importantly, I guess, that's open for debate, but people are really trying to stay engaged with donors and constituents, not just staff, right? So what are some of the tools that we're finding that are reasonably low cost and easy, that's a relative term I understand, easy to get up and running pretty quickly? Let's talk a little bit about, some of the communication tools, like we're using Zoom, for example. Stephanie, let's start with you. I know you mentioned a minute ago, like Zoom and a couple of other tools, but one thing I wondered about is the mobile aspect to that. Are those tools that you mentioned, do they have mobile capabilities too for people who are working on mobile phones?
Yeah, definitely. Both Microsoft Teams has a mobile app, and it's quite awesome. You can actually do video calls using it, as well as instant messaging. And you can make phone calls as well. It doesn't have like a conference bridge or anything like that, so it's more of an internal with your email addresses. Zoom as well has an app. I think too, some people use the tool called Slack, which they are offering, they've got like a basic free version, and then they've got a nonprofit discount, as well as they're offering like their standard package for a period of time for nonprofits and small businesses. Let's see what else. I think texting, of course, Facebook Messenger. I think there's quite a few people that, if you're on Facebook, using Facebook Messenger to communicate with donors or, your clients is another good tool. Ben, can you think of anything else that
I think,
I haven't mentioned?
also just kind of what everyone else is used to using is email. That's
Mhm.
a big one also, and I think that we should continue using it. Really, it's just about kind of setting standards to what are you going to use these platforms for. Just a kind of putting a map together and saying, we're going to utilize email for this. We're going to utilize our phone calls for this. We're going to utilize these video conferencing tools for this. Just kind of, just to map out some things, just to kind of alleviate some confusion. That's definitely a good thing, good kind of work exercise to do with your team.
Cool, Ben.
Angie, what are you guys using?
Well, I've gone back to something that's very old-fashioned for dealing with some of our donors and just trying to spread message and a little bit of love to them. I have gone to writing handwritten note cards. I'm doing some of that now. There's some donors that we have that I think really appreciate that. It's something that it's a little more time consuming than hammering out an email for sure, which would be maybe normally my go-to, but these are different times. And I think one thing that I found too is I'm calling people also and speaking with them on the phone, because before that would be kind of iffy. You wouldn't catch people. Now I'm catching everybody. I'm reaching everybody I call and they pick up. They're at home. I say, is this a good time? They're like, yeah, sure. So that's been kind of nice that I'm actually connecting with them. So it feels like there's that personal type of connection in a way that didn't work as well before, because when everyone was running around and was so busy and not at home, that I couldn't reach anyone, or they were always, disposed. So now it's kind of nice for that. So that's some of the new things that we're doing. We use Slack as an office to keep in touch with one another more. We were kind of using that in lieu of texting so that people could turn it off. And whereas, like unlike texting where you're going to get, from your mom or whatever, and you're going to have everybody on there, if it was a Slack message, it had a different ring, a different kind of tone on your phone, you knew it was work, and you could also silence it. Whereas people typically left their texts on. So I wouldn't want people to feel like they had to respond, all the time when it was outside of work. I was trying to infuse a little bit of that work-life balance thing. So we use Slack to help us manage some of that before. But letter writing and calls is kind of my new thing.
I think you made two really good points there. Number one is, let's not overlook low-tech strategies, because sometimes that is the best strategy. So that's a great point that you made. And the other point that you made, using Slack, and Slack's not the only one that does this. There are a lot of tools that do it. The takeaway from that is, look for tools that give you the ability to control the noise. And that's really what you said. You don't want people's personal text threads being inundated with work type text. And so, there are a lot of tools out there. There's not, Slack does it, other teams can do it, a lot of tools do it. But the takeaway is, guys, when you're considering that, look for tools that give you the ability to control some of the noise. Chris, would you add anything to what we were just saying?
Yeah, just a little. And just to tag on to what you were just saying there, a lot of Centene's members are older and don't have smartphones, don't have, aren't very computer savvy. So we still rely a lot on phone calls, their voice phone calls and things like that. When we're not in situations like we are now with social distancing, we also just do a lot of driving out and visiting them face to face. But other than the tools that were mentioned, I'd say FaceTime for Apple phone users is good to know about, because any phone call that you just make on the phone, you can easily switch it over to a FaceTime call if the other person has it, just by pressing a button. So that's an easy one to talk people through without having to download an app or anything like that. And I'll also give a plug for the Slack, mention of Slack, for groups, folks that don't know about these streaming messaging type platforms. The real advantage there, if you set it up right, is that you can have kind of different filters for different types of conversations. So you can have a channel that's just for your, what was it, Pinterest type stuff, or funniest backgrounds or whatever. And then you can have a few that are for business stuff, and it keeps everything in context and sheltered a little bit more than what you're going to find in email, where it's kind of everything, or somebody's personal text. So those are definitely worth checking into. Zulip is the version that Centene uses, though I personally prefer Slack myself.
Great. I appreciate that. So, you know, one of the other things we were talking about just in general is, what are some of the tips that we might recommend to folks to try to help them up their game when they're doing virtual meetings? Easy things that we can do, or tips that we can give. Where you place your camera, what about the lighting in the room? Those kinds of things. Let's talk just a little bit about, and actually one of the things I want to add there, and I'm going to ask Ben to speak to this, is, for example, the new security messages we're getting about how to lock down Zoom. You know, it seems big and scary, but really when you break it down, it's not all that big. So yeah, let's start with Ben telling us a little bit about what we can do, best practices for Zoom security, and then we'll go round robin to find out, get some more tips on just what we can do to up our virtual meeting game a little bit. Ben, take it away.
Sure. So I know there's been a lot of news articles and talk about kind of the different Zoom boomings going on, I guess they're getting called now. And it seems like there's a new article every day, and then you can read about something happened, or something in the past, or something in the future, or something now. You know, Zoom has tried to identify what they're doing to kind of take these precautionaries and kind of clean up some of the stuff that they left open in the past. And there's a great white paper that they have put out with different security standards that you can put into place to kind of help protect you during those recorded webinars or meetings also. And we'd be happy to share that with y'all. Really, it's not a completely controlled environment. There are steps that you can take to protect yourself, but in all security situations, it's not 100%. So when you are setting up your webinars or meetings, just make sure that security is kind of on the front of your mind during those also. Like I said, we'd be happy to share kind of some of those security tips and also the white papers that Zoom has put out. And we've actually gone in and tweak some things inside of our Zoom also for our meetings and our webinars. Just some simple little buttons that all you got to do is click them one way, and they really protect. So like I said, I'd be happy to share with everyone.
Thank you, Ben. So Chris, what are some of your tips that you would offer up to, you know, sort of up your game just a little bit with virtual meetings?
Yeah. So a lot of it is really just with these types of meetings, things that were really good ideas always for all meetings now become a little more front and center because of the technology. So, you know, having an agenda, asking people to mute their microphones when they go in, asking that people use video, I find is a big piece of it. You know, it keeps people's focus on the topic. You can gauge reactions when people aren't commenting because they have their microphone muted. That's, you know, those are key things, you know, not having a lot of crosstalk, things like that. Lighting, not a good example here. Everybody else on this Zoom, I think, is a good, but you know, I've been on some where people don't have good lighting or are not really focused on what their image looks like going out. They're just happy with what they're seeing, and so part of their head's cut off or something. Just take a little care to make sure that the image you're projecting, somebody else on the other end is going to be able to tell what your reaction is. Do you look like you're following along or not? The chat feature is really nice because You can ask a question or put a thought out there without really interrupting anybody. And so there's some features, and like we're recording this, those are nice things that you don't generally have in a regular face-to-face meeting. Those are really good tools to get to learn to use.
Thank you. And let me just twist the question slightly for Stephanie. So all these are good tips, you know, for us to set up our meeting, but what are some things we can do if we're in the middle of a meeting and all of a sudden we start hearing echoes in the line, or we start seeing somebody's picture get frozen and all that kind of stuff? What are some things we can do just to keep our meeting limping along when we have things like that happen?
Probably the two that come to mind are if there's a lot of background noise or echoing, it's just making sure that all the participants are on mute except for the person that's speaking. That helps out tremendously. I don't know, I've been on quite a few calls recently where like I'm speaking and there's all this echoing, you know, and it's hard because you're hearing yourself speak. And so kind of learning to tell everybody or have them join. You can do that in a meeting setting, is just have everybody join muted, and have a policy in place that unmute yourself if you want to speak or raise your hand. Let's see, the other, sometimes when we're doing a, I'll just use Teams for example, when we're doing a Teams meeting internally, depending on how much bandwidth is being used at your home, your internet, like you've got your kids doing their schoolwork and your husband's working and you're trying to work, it sucks up a lot of your internet capacity. So you may have to turn off that video and just do the voice. Because video does take up quite a bit of internet, but I highly recommend that in order to make these meetings more personal, to have your video camera on if you can. I hope that helps.
Yeah, Angie, would you add anything to that? I don't know if you guys have had any issues with connectivity or people being able to get their tech online. Are you guys having pretty good experience, or have you bumped up against anything that you might want to offer?
We're having a pretty good experience. I think some of the things that now that we are doing these Zoom meetings also with my board of directors, we haven't had a full board meeting yet. That's coming up on April 21st. So this ought to be very interesting. We had an executive committee meeting where everyone joins, and now we've got where some people through their employer, they're no longer allowing them to use Zoom with the camera feature on at all. So now they have to call in. So that's a little bit different too. And I think it just comes out, as Ben was alluding to earlier, some of those cybersecurity types of concerns and things, that it's a little more difficult. So I'm not sure how we're going to progress with this board meeting, and maybe we need to select another platform for that. One of the things we also noticed about Zoom as we're using it, and we didn't use it at all like before this. I don't know what we thought we were going to do really, but I was just making sure everybody had their laptop and had their stuff and could access things, which I thought most people did from home anyway. But our HHOC account at Zoom can only have one host at a time. So everybody thinks Zoom is so easy that just between each other, they want to Zoom each other, which is great, except for if somebody's having a meeting, that's an actual meeting that they need to use Zoom for because they've told somebody to meet them on there, that becomes a little difficult. So now we're having to put some policies in place where we've never had any before, which is get your own Zoom personal account also. That way, if you just want to talk to one other teammate, you can do that kind of offline rather than taking the company's line to do the meeting at that time. So everyone now has to kind of look at the schedule before they book an actual Zoom meeting, whereas before I think everyone was just clicking, oh, we'll just meet on Zoom. Oh, I'll just invite you right now. And that was kind of what began to go on, and that became a little bit of a challenge. So we're having to make things up. And again, it's the sign of the times. We're in a time where I feel like everyone's kind of making this up as they go along. we're in uncharted territory. There are things we don't know. There are things we don't know that we're going to bump up against and that are going to become problematic. So we just have to be nimble and willing to deal with things a little bit on the fly and give ourselves a bit of grace that it may not be perfect, but that's okay. Everyone's kind of dealing with this in some way or shape or form in their own personal life and in their own professional life too.
Exactly. Again, it's being flexible and building it as we go. And Stephanie, I see that you saw there was a question in there that I thought might be good for everyone to know, and you're answering it, but maybe you could address it for the whole group. And that is, hey, is there a limitation to how many people we can have on Zoom calls? So if you'd like to address that and any other tips you might like to offer at this time.
Well, for the Zoom Pro plan, which you can get through TechSoup.org, I believe it's $75 annually, which is a 50% discount. You can have up to 100 participants on a call. And I'm going to ask Ben if do you remember for the free Zoom, is it a one-to-one or can you have multiple people on the Zoom, free Zoom?
I'm not exactly sure now. I don't know.
I think it's up to 20. I think you can have up to 20 if I'm not mistaken. But you can only go for 40 minutes. Right.
Yeah, and I think they've lifted that for the time being. It was what I was reading recently.
Nice.
So, yeah.
That's a big deal right there. If they've lifted that, that's huge, guys, for free accounts.
Yeah, it is huge.
Yep.
Yeah. Any other tips to add to the mix, Stephanie?
I do want to throw something out just to think about if you're having slow internet or your video's locking up on you. Most of us use Wi-Fi these days. It's not as fast as having your laptop or computer connected directly with a cable to your internet service. So if you're able to directly connect to your internet router at home, you'll get faster, more reliable signal. So just wanted to throw that out there. Tech tip.
Yeah, I tell you, you hate being tethered by wires in this day and age with so much wireless technology. But like you say, the fact of the matter is wired rules. There's a reason that hospitals aren't completely wireless. Anyway, so guys, we're approaching at 10 of the hour. So I want to open the floor to Chris just for anything in general that you might like to address or add that we haven't touched on today. Just tips for anybody or recommendations or insights that you might like to add. Chris?
Yes. No, I think we've covered a lot of stuff here. I didn't want to do it while everyone was talking because it can be a distraction, but I'm going to cycle through a few of my favorite Zoom backgrounds here in a minute. There's websites out there specializing in funny things. The funniest one I've heard about so far is taking a video of yourself in Zoom and then using that as your background. And you can either walk in on yourself or just have your Zoom background attend your meetings for you. So people are getting creative with that. Let's see, I sometimes, if there's technical difficulties, I'll sometimes ask people to try to reconnect. You know, sometimes maybe they just get a bad connection. We've had some of that happen with audio not coming through on Zoom. I will often use my phone separately and not run the sound through the Zoom so that if the video freezes, that's one thing, but still being able to hear and be heard is another. And worst case scenario, if my home Wi-Fi is down, I'll tether my mobile phone to my computer and sometimes use it that way. So if you get a little proficient with those and you have those as tools, you really have a lot of flexibility when an issue or two does come up.
Cool. Thank you. Before we look at those cool backgrounds, Angie, anything else you would like to add?
I'm trying to think about some of the tips and things that we're using or that we're kind of figuring out as things go along. I think one thing that I've noticed has been, unlike when usually let's say we're having a meeting and I know everybody who's coming. It's my board or a committee that we're all meeting together. So we meet on Zoom, and I don't have everyone's phone numbers memorized. So if a phone, you know how you have like the little phone shape and the phone number in the bottom, and you can click on the participant list, but you'll have like the names of the people who put their names in and they're coming in logged in, and then there are people who called in and their numbers are there. I realized I can't figure out a good way to go back and find out who actually attended a meeting if I haven't looked at that list while the meeting was occurring, even if I've recorded it. So I haven't found a way to do that. So there might be a way to do that. I don't know what it is. So now I've gotten to, like, again, one of these old-fashioned things, like kind of doing a roll call to kind of see who is in the meeting that we're having, so I can log everybody that is in the meeting for minutes. So that's been something that's been a little bit different. It was something I kind of assumed would be there that wasn't actually as easy as I thought.
Yeah, registration is probably the way to go for that, to get the reports and stuff on the back end. But, you know, it's a trade-off. Everything's a trade-off. How easy do I want it to be for people to get in my meeting versus what kind of analytics do I need on the backside? But
right.
In any case, yeah. Again, learning as we go and trying to figure it out, right?
Definitely.
So, guys, as we begin to wrap up our session, I want to turn it back over to Chris because he does have some cool stuff that I really think you guys will enjoy having a look at. As we wind down our session today, be sure and post anything that you might like us to address in the chat window if we haven't gotten to it yet. But let's go back over to Chris and let him share with us some of the funny things he's come across.
Yeah, and I got, you know, people love to share these, and we can send links out too. There's a lot of these are from Reddit, but you know, here I'm in the pokey. And the nice thing about this is all under the gear. If you're in Zoom, in the upper right on the home screen, there's a little gear. If you go into that, there's actually a tab for virtual background, and you can just upload any picture. So these are off a website. I am one of Queen, but you know, I've got stuff on here. Here's from our yearly beach trip last year, Attack of the Flying Kittens. You know, people, this is a neat way to express, and then also, you know, just bring a little of, you know, we usually have pictures at our desks and things like that of, you know, maybe that's all at the office and we don't have that right now. It's just another way to tie things in and make them a little more personable. And concert footage. So here's where everybody's toilet paper is. But I'm sure a lot of you already know these things, but now there's actual websites out there just catering to this.
So guys, Chris mentioned earlier that he would share some of those links with us here at Aparo. So what we'll do is make sure that we post those out with the resources. One of the questions that we did get in our Q&A before we wrap this up was whether or not we recommend using passwords to enter Zoom meetings. And Ben, let me flip that back over to you again. You know, just if you would reiterate what you said about security, make sure we answer that before we wrap it up for the day.
Sure. I think that's, you know, one of the things that's in that white paper also is putting that password on there to get in. It's really just trying to cover your tracks so it's not posted out to like social media for anybody to be able to join. And it's really just dedicated to those people that sign up for the meeting itself. I think that's just an extra layer of security also. And I think Zoom does recommend doing that.
You guys had to do that for us today. When we had originally scheduled this message, scheduled this meeting, we didn't have that set up. And after these new recommendations came out, then we went back and required registration for you guys and password entry. And that's why it's the whole security thing. We like it to be as easy peasy as it can be, but you know, it's a trade-off and a balance. Yeah. Stephanie, anything to add to that?
I was going to suggest creating a waiting room So when your participants are getting ready to join, the host is able to actually go out and see the names and who's going to join. And that helps make your session more secure.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, guys, we are at 12:55, and so we're going to begin wrapping up. Please feel free, if you have questions or remarks that we didn't get to today, that you'd like to add after the fact, you can email or contact anybody at Aparo, and if we don't have the answer, we'll be happy to go find one. Hopefully the most accurate one. But in any case, we appreciate you joining us and sharing your time with us. As always, we're here to help. Let us know what we can do. I would like to thank our panelists, Chris Long and Angie Bush, for joining us today and sharing their insights. And of course, our own Stephanie and Ben, who we just couldn't do without, frankly, at Aparo. We're so happy that we've got these great experts on our team to guide us. With that, I'm going to wish you a happy day. Hope everybody has a chance to enjoy this wonderful weather while it's here, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys again on one of our next meetings. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.